Number 14. Lauren Fagan. In 2013, 18-year-old Lauren Fagan moved from Montreal, Quebec to a wildlife refuge in South Africa to participate in a volunteer program. During her time at the Mahola Holla Wildlife Rehabilitation Center, the Canadian teen was attacked by a large male lion named Duma, who tore through her leg with his massive claws. Lauren later told CBC News that a supervisor had asked her to clean a feeding enclosure attached to Duma's pen by herself, even though the volunteers usually worked in pairs. While she cleaned, Duma began rubbing up against the cage in a seemingly affectionate way. Knowing that it's dangerous to get too close to a lion, even if they seem nice, Lauren moved away from the cage, but she didn't move far enough away to avoid Duma's claws, which tore through her leg like butter. The next thing she knew, Lauren had fallen hard on her back as the lion pulled her toward his cage by her leg. A female lion named Tree joined the attack. When Lauren looked at her lower leg, she was horrified by what she saw. Her kneecap was dangling by a shred of flesh, and she would later describe the sight as like what you would see at the butcher, like something from a dead cow that would hang from the ceiling. The young woman was dragged away from the lions by a staff member who fought the lions off with a broom. She was then rushed to the hospital, where doctors put her leg back together and treated her for muscle and nerve damage to her leg and feet. During an interview with CBC shortly after the incident, Lauren insisted she was following instructions when the attack occurred, but the park's founder accused her of being negligent, telling CBS News that Lauren had said from day one that she came there to hug a lion. That simply wasn't true, according to Lauren, who said she would never compromise her safety just to get close to an animal, even though bonding with wildlife was a dream of hers. Lauren acknowledged that she could have lost a limb or, even worse, died. While interviewing for author Dougie White's book, Bite Club 10 years later, she summed up the experience in a few simple words: it could have been worse. Number 13. Catalina Torres Ibarra. 21-year-old Catalina Torres Ibarra was just doing what she was told by her superiors when she went to clean a tiger cage at a safari park in Rancagua, Chile in 2021. Someone failed to inform her that the door to the enclosure was open, and she was fatally mauled by a tiger. Catalina died at the scene from horrific neck wounds, and the park staff members proceeded to play the blame game by pointing the finger back and forth at one another for the cage door being left open. Park official Antonio Rojas accused a group of workers of opening the gate to the tiger's pen in violation of protocol, but the employees insisted that they found the gate open. A representative told the press that none of Catalina's duties involved direct contact with animals, and the property was closed to the public while an investigation was carried out. In late 2023, authorities announced that the park's owner, his son, and a veterinarian are accused of harboring responsibility in Catalina's death by way of negligence. According to prosecutors, Catalina was not properly trained for the assigned tasks she was performing. She was also not provided with protection or security, and staff members failed to inform her of the tiger's presence. The investigation also ruled that no emergency protocols were followed, including the use of a weapon to neutralize the tiger. Number 12. Taigan Safari Park. Located on the Crimean Peninsula, which lies at the center of a years-long territorial dispute between Russia and Ukraine, Taigan Safari Park is Europe's largest breeding ground for large mammals. The 70-acre facility is home to around 60 lions, as well as tigers, bears, zebras, and other animals. It opened in 2012 under the ownership of Russian businessman Oleg Zubkov and has been seemingly plagued by problems ever since. When Russia invaded and forcefully annexed the Crimea Peninsula in early 2014, the country's government imposed economic restrictions on Ukrainian bank accounts in the region. Because Taigan Safari Park stored its money in a Ukrainian bank, its owners and staff members were cut off from any access to the company's funds. And without money, they were unable to feed the park's lions, who eat 15 to 22 pounds of meat per day each. The financial cutoff sparked fears that the big cats would starve to death, including a population of rare white lions. Thankfully, the park made it through the crisis without a large-scale die-off of any of its animals. 4 years later, in 2018, 46-year-old Olga Solomina was attacked by a lion during a visit to the park. She later said that she was offered the opportunity to enter the animal's enclosure and take a picture with it. Olga crouched down next to the lion for her photo op, but regretted the decision just moments later when the feline clamped its jaws down on her arm. As the lion dragged Olga across its cage, she became convinced she was going to die. Thankfully, that didn't happen, and she was rescued with only minor injuries to her arm. Following the incident, owner Oleg Zubkov told the press that nothing like this had ever happened at the park. He accused Olga of disobeying the park's rules and being drunk, even claiming that she asked for cognac instead of a painkiller. Zubkov also offered to cover Olga's medical bills, even though he insisted the park wasn't at fault for her injuries. Despite Zubkov's claims that this was a first-time occurrence, the incident reminded the public about a previous alleged attack that had reportedly occurred more than a year earlier. According to news reports, 29-year-old employee Maxim Yakovlev was found mauled to death by a tiger at the park in 2017. Zubkov denied the claim, but Yakovlev's injuries appeared consistent with having been attacked. Just weeks after the incident involving Olga Solomina, a lion named Filya was captured on video jumping into a visitor's car and nuzzling its occupants. Zubkov watched it happening and did nothing to separate the lion from the guests, even though it's clearly a bad idea to allow people to cuddle with a several hundred-pound apex predator, and especially because it seems like the park owner encourages this behavior, only to pass the buck and blame the victim whenever something goes wrong. In 2019, Zubkov posted a YouTube video claiming he could no longer afford to feed his animals. He offered them up for adoption and said he would have no choice but to shoot them if he didn't find new homes for them. Needless to say, the pitch didn't go over very well with the public, and it appears as though the embattled owner found a way to feed the animals. In 2020, a court sentenced Zubkov to 2 months in jail and ordered him to close down the park's Walk with the Lions trail where Olga was attacked. It was just the latest in a years-long string of conflicts Zubkov has encountered since Russia seized the Crimean Peninsula, even though he initially supported the takeover. The following year, a lion bit off a child's finger. Zubkov served 3 months of a more than 2-year prison sentence and has since returned to the park, which only ever seems to be waiting for its next controversy. Number 11. Sarah Maclay. In May of 2013, 24-year-old zookeeper Sarah Maclay was attacked by a Sumatran tiger at South Lakes Wild Animal Park in Cumbria, England. Witnesses later described seeing the big cat named Padang dragging Sarah into its den by her neck. Sarah's husband Cornelius, who also worked at the park, saw what was happening and pried the enclosure's entrance open with a crowbar. But there was unfortunately nothing he could do to save his wife, who died from deep puncture wounds to her neck and body. Authorities launched an investigation to determine how the tragedy occurred, despite the existence of safety mechanisms that were meant to protect workers. Cornelius Maclay told investigators that a door that was meant to keep workers separated from the tigers had been left unlocked. He also noticed that 2 internal gates had been left open, giving the tigers access to Sarah that they were not supposed to have. Now known as South Lake Safari Zoo, the park admitted to health and safety breaches, including its failure to protect non-employees from danger and neglecting to repair a defective gate lock, which may have contributed to Sarah's death. Authorities fined the park several $100,000 and criminally charged its owner, David Gill, who was ultimately acquitted. Sarah's loved ones said that the park's willingness to admit to its wrongdoings helped them along in the healing process, especially because some people had blamed Sarah for what happened to her. The family was happy to have it officially on the record that Sarah's death wasn't her fault. This wasn't the zoo's first controversy or court case. In fact, it was one of many. In 1997, a 3-ton rhino escaped its enclosure and was shot in a nearby property. Multiple animals have suffered untimely deaths, including 30 lemurs who died in an electrical fire caused by a faulty space heater. An escaped monkey was captured in a local church in 2010 after inspectors had expressed concerns in the past about the possibility of animals escaping. In 2023, animal rights activists uncovered evidence of alleged animal welfare violations, prompting an ongoing campaign to shutter the zoo permanently. But the park's leadership has no plans to willingly comply with these demands, and the zoo remains open to visitors. Number 10. David and Celia Barlow. After tying the knot in October 2023, newlyweds David and Celia Barlow went on a safari in Uganda's Queen Elizabeth National Park. During the trip, the couple and their guide, Erica Yai, were fatally ambushed by members of a rebel group called the Allied Democratic Forces. In a senseless act of violence, the militants gunned down the trio and set their vehicle ablaze. Park personnel found the vehicle engulfed in flames with the victims' charred remains inside. Following the triple murder, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni posted a tweet vowing to track down the killers and hold them accountable for their actions. He also vowed to wipe out the ADF's presence in Uganda, where hundreds of civilians have died in rebel attacks. Just days after the attack on the Barlows, Ugandan forces captured the ADF leader thought to be responsible for the deaths of the couple and their guide. Known only as Njovu, he was apprehended in a raid that resulted in 6 members of his squad being killed. He remains in custody and will eventually stand trial for his crimes. Formed by Ugandan Muslims during the early 1990s, the ADF has spent most of its existence based in the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo. Its members oppose Ugandan President Museveni, who has been in power for nearly 40 years. In 2019, the ADF pledged its allegiance to the Islamic State terrorist group, also known as ISIS. Since 2023, the ADF has stepped up its violent activities in Uganda, while the country's official forces work to oust the group entirely. Efforts to eliminate ADF rebels from neighboring eastern Congo have been ongoing since 2021. According to President Museveni, the killers who attacked the honeymooning victims were fleeing from the encroaching authorities in the Congo. Normally, these types of attacks are rare in Uganda, where national parks are patrolled by a specialized police force. In the aftermath of the violent tragedy, the British government issued an advisory recommending only necessary travel to Queen Elizabeth Park. Number 9. Catherine Chappell. In 2015, 29-year-old Game of Thrones editor Catherine Chappell took some time away from work to do some volunteering in South Africa. During her time there, she visited a lion park in Johannesburg where she rolled the window of her vehicle down to snap photos of a 9-year-old lioness. The big cat was less than 4 feet from Chappell as she stood on her hind legs and peered into the vehicle. But there's a reason that the park strictly bans its visitors from opening their windows, and Chappell's group learned this painful lesson firsthand when the lion pounced at the young woman and bit her neck. After sinking its teeth into the unsuspecting visitor's flesh, the lion ran away with blood dripping from her mouth. Chappell's friend and colleague Ben Govinder later told reporters that the lion then turned around and jumped into the car, mauling Catherine for a second time. Park rangers rushed over from nearby and managed to scare off a few of the lions surrounding the car. But the lion that was attacking Chappell didn't want to let go, according to Govinder, who said that the big cat had half of Catherine's shoulder in her mouth. By then, it was too late to save Chappell. She died from her injuries, and some people were quick to criticize the park for the tragedy. But the unfortunate truth is that Chappell and her friends were all breaking the park's rules by having their windows wide open. And while her death is undeniably tragic, it should also serve as a reminder of why it's a good idea to exercise extreme caution near wild animals. Number 8. Kabelo Mashao. While on routine patrol at the Inverdoorn Private Nature Reserve in South Africa in 2023, 36-year-old park ranger Kabelo Mashao noticed a bull elephant he was familiar with using its trunk to open the latch on a perimeter gate. As an experienced elephant handler, Mashao decided it was best if he handled the situation. He told his co-worker to remain in their vehicle while he got out and tried coaxing the elephant back into the reserve. In a sudden turn of events, the giant mammal became spooked and charged at Mashao. The elephant used its trunk to knock the ranger to the ground, gored him with its tusks, then proceeded to stomp him to death, leaving his body unrecognizable. Following the tragedy, a colleague told the Daily Mail that the elephant was normally very friendly. Adding to the devastation was the fact that Mashao could have had a day off because it was a national holiday, but he volunteered to work so his co-workers could enjoy some time with their families. Mashao's death was truly a freak tragedy. According to his employer, nothing like it had happened before or has happened since. Speaking with IOL, elephant expert Katarina von Durkheim explained that an elephant may attack their handler for a number of reasons, including if the animal is injured or sick, if they feel threatened, are caught by surprise, or have offspring to protect. Male elephants are also known to become extra aggressive when their testosterone levels are high. But there's not enough information to identify a common denominator when it comes to elephant attacks on handlers, according to von Durkheim, who also cited possible factors including herd structure, social stressors, the elephant's history of being captured, whether the animal is being treated with hormones, and if they're possibly suffering from an invisible injury. African elephants are often thought of as inherently gentle creatures, but they kill an estimated 500 people per year, standing up to 13 feet tall and weighing as much as 12,500 pounds. The species is the world's largest land animal. It's unclear what ended up happening to the elephant, who had been introduced to the game reserve around 15 years earlier. According to the most recent available updates on the case, an investigation was ongoing. Mashao left behind a wife and 2 children and is deeply missed by his colleagues, who described him as a gentle handler who dedicated his life and career to interacting with elephants. Number 7. Claude Cleynans. 54-year-old Claude Cleynans was a shameless trophy hunter who spent more than 30 years killing big game in Africa, but he eventually angered the wrong animal and was forced to confront his own mortality during a hunting trip in South Africa's Limpopo province in 2018. Claude's group killed a buffalo and were loading the slain animal onto a truck when another member of its herd charged at them. The buffalo punctured Claude's groin with its horn, severing his femoral artery and killing him almost instantly. People were shocked by the celebrity trophy hunter's death, given his level of experience, but at the same time, Claude's death wasn't entirely shocking. Buffalo are known for being territorial, especially when it comes to protecting their herd. They're also massive, reaching weights of up to 1,300 pounds. Many trophy hunting opponents looked at Claude's death as karma for all the animals he killed throughout his lifetime. He also spent decades leading others on hunts and helping them achieve their goals of killing some of nature's most majestic creatures. Claude's company, Goella Safaris, hosted these big game hunts near South Africa's northern border for high-paying clientele. Customers were able to choose what they wanted to kill from a menu consisting of dozens of animals. Some of the animals had specific trophy fees listed next to them, including zebras, which had a listing price of $1,500, while giraffes came at a heftier cost of $2,850. Other species, including buffalo, did not have a specified fee on the menu and were only available as part of a special package. Whether anyone agrees with Claude's chosen hobby and career or not, there's no denying that he died doing what he loved. And while many animal rights activists weren't exactly sad about his death, he remains a legend of the hunting world. Number 6. Julie Ward. 28-year-old amateur nature photographer Julie Ward received the opportunity of a lifetime in 1988 when she traveled to Kenya for 7 months to capture photos of the country's breathtaking wildlife. She was due to return to Great Britain in just a few days when she suddenly vanished in September of that year. Julie's father John and her mother Jan dropped everything and flew to Kenya to look for their missing daughter. They began their search in the Masai Mara Reserve, where Julie was last seen. On the day she disappeared, Julie was due to travel to Nairobi the next morning to catch her flight home. She was driving on the reserve with an Australian friend, Dr. Glenn Burns, when their vehicle broke down in the middle of nowhere. The two ended up parting ways, with Burns leaving for Nairobi while Julie went to retrieve some camping equipment before heading to the city. In what can only be described as a parent's worst nightmare, John discovered Julie's charred and mutilated remains in a shallow grave on the reserve. Kenyan officials initially claimed that Julie had been attacked by lions and struck by lightning, even though the evidence indicated that someone had deliberately set fire to her body. The government refused to consider the possibility of foul play, but Julie's parents remained just as stubborn, if not more so, in their determination to find out what really happened to their daughter. They accused the country's officials of covering up the true nature of Julie's death to prevent damage to the tourism industry's reputation. John Ward visited Kenya over 150 times in his relentless attempt to get to the bottom of the case. It was eventually discovered that Julie's autopsy report had been amended to exclude any mention of the fact that the cut marks on her bones had been inflicted by a blade rather than animal teeth. A British pathologist who carried out a secondary examination of the teen's remains confirmed that she had most likely been doused in gasoline and set on fire. Kenyan officials eventually conceded to the fact that Julie was murdered, and in 1992, 2 junior park rangers were tried and acquitted in the case. 6 years later, the chief park warden was tried and found not guilty of Julie's murder. Over the years, the wards singled out the Kenyan president's son, Jonathan Moi, as their top suspect. He has never been charged, and in 2023, John and Jan Ward died just days apart, without ever finding out the truth about what happened to Julie. Their sons, Bob and Tim, have vowed to continue the quest for answers in hopes that long overdue justice will finally be served. Number 5. Deadly drive-through. In July of 2016, a woman known only as Ms. Zhao stepped out of her family's car at the Beijing Badaling Wildlife Drive-Through Safari Park. Within moments, she was attacked and dragged away by a Siberian tiger. The woman's mother, who's referred to as Ms. Zhou in news reports, was mauled to death by a second tiger while trying to defend her daughter. Park staff rescued the younger woman, who survived the attack with a neck injury and is reportedly disabled now. Based on surveillance footage of the horrifying encounter, people initially thought that Zhao exited the vehicle during a family argument. It was later revealed that she mistakenly thought the car had exited the animal enclosure. The park was investigated but cleared of any safety breaches. Upon reopening after the investigation, the staff hung signs warning people not to exit vehicles and stopped allowing self-driving tours. In late 2017, Zhao and her family filed a 6-figure lawsuit against the park for her mother's funeral costs, lost income that was needed to support the family, and money for emotional damages. Speaking with Chinese news agency Xinhua, Zhao said that her family never denied being partially responsible for the tragedy, but that they believe the park should also take some of the blame. Number 4. Larry and Bianca Rudolph. Lawrence Larry Rudolph was a respected dentist in the Pittsburgh area. In 2016, he and his wife Bianca went on a hunting trip to Kafue National Park in Zambia. They were both experienced hunters, yet on the last night of the trip, 56-year-old Bianca wound up dead from a gunshot inside the couple's cabin. Larry initially claimed that his wife's fatal wound was self-inflicted, only to quickly change his story and say that Bianca died in a bizarre freak accident. He told the police that he was in the bath when the deadly gunshot went off, yet he was clothed and perfectly dry. Hunting guide Spencer Kokoma told 48 Hours that he had seen Bianca unload the gun's ammunition after that day's hunt, leaving him confused about how it got reloaded and went off inside the cabin just a short while later. Zambian officials ruled Bianca's death an accident, but American authorities suspected foul play. In addition to giving conflicting details about the incident, Larry was entangled in a years-long affair with his office manager and stood to gain nearly $5 million from life insurance policies that listed him as the beneficiary. He also had Bianca cremated before leaving Zambia, even though she was a devout Catholic who opposed the practice, leading to suspicions that he wanted to make sure that an autopsy was impossible. The FBI finally arrested Larry in late 2021, more than 5 years after Bianca's death. About a year later, a jury found him guilty of murder, despite a lack of physical evidence proving the crime. Rudolph was also convicted of mail fraud in connection with the life insurance payouts. He's currently serving a life sentence in the federal prison system, which does not have parole, meaning he will spend the rest of his days behind bars. Rudolph's mistress and co-defendant, Lori Millerin, was convicted of being an accessory to murder and sentenced to 17 years in prison. According to prosecutors and the court, Millerin encouraged Larry to kill Bianca. During her sentencing hearing, the judge described her as unrepentant due to the lack of emotion she showed while listening to heart-wrenching testimony from Bianca's loved ones. Number 3. Hans Boxler Sr. Located in Verisburg, New York, the Hidden Valley Animal Adventure Safari Park boasts over 40 species, including camels, zebras, wildebeests, llamas, emu, bison, and ostriches. Owned by lifelong animal lover Hans Boxler Sr., the park was also home to a large species of Asian antelope called the nilgai. Resembling a bizarre cross between a cow and an antelope, these creatures can grow to weigh more than 600 pounds. Boxler prided himself on respecting his animals' natural instincts and behaviors. He also valued the safety of both humans and his pets. So when the 81-year-old failed to return home one night in 2016 after heading out to feed his menagerie, the possibility of a violent encounter with an animal was not the first thought to cross his loved ones' minds. The next morning, the family noticed that a nilgai had escaped its inner enclosure. They went outside and discovered Boxler's lifeless body lying on the ground in the animal's pen. The antelope was still confined by an outer fence, but by getting out of its pen, it was able to come into direct contact with Boxler. His body was covered in blunt force injuries from being fatally trampled by the creature. The senior citizen's relatives were shocked by his death, considering the amount of caution he used when dealing with his animals. It was the first and only accident to ever occur at the property, and since nobody saw it happen, the antelope's reasons for attacking its owner will forever remain a mystery. Number 2. Molobengwe Mfala. As a graduate of a prestigious tracking academy that only accepts 24 applicants per year, South African park ranger Molobengwe Mfala was exceptionally skilled at navigating the outdoors. In 2021, wealthy tourists paid him to lead them to some cheetahs at Madikeli National Park, where he had been working for 3 years. This was a normal part of Mfala's job. He was employed by a luxury safari company whose overnight villas can fetch upwards of $900 per night, and his customer base often consisted of rich trophy hunters and those seeking a close-up view of wildlife that they won't get to see in many other places. During the search, Mfala parked his jeep and decided to stalk the animals on foot. He walked no more than 66 feet when a pair of male lions emerged from the bushes and dragged him along the ground. The young man was essentially eaten alive. A nearby driver called for help, but by the time emergency responders arrived, it was too late to save Mfala's life. He was just 27 years old. Park personnel euthanized the 2 lions that killed Mfala. A post-mortem exam revealed that they were just 9 months old. They had been abandoned by their mother in recent weeks, which is unusual compared to the 2-year period that young males usually spend in their mother's care. The lions were in poor condition, indicating that they had not yet learned the skills they needed to survive on their own. Their desperation to eat was most likely a factor in their decision to kill Mfala. An investigation ruled that the 27-year-old park ranger had followed all the proper protocols for doing his job. He just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, serving as a reminder of just how unpredictable nature can be. And now for number 1. But if you want to hear more bizarre and crazy stories, stay tuned after the video for some more content. Number 1. Scott Van Zyl. Scott Van Zyl was 44 years old when he disappeared in Zimbabwe during an African hunting safari with friends in April 2017. His absence was first noticed when his dogs returned to the group's camp without him, prompting a search for the missing man. Van Zyl's friends followed his trail to the Limpopo River, where they found his backpack lying on the ground near the water. The river was teeming with Nile crocodiles, leading to the stomach-churning conclusion that Van Zyl had most likely been killed and possibly eaten by the reptiles. With permission from park staff, the group shot 3 of the crocodiles, one of which had human remains in its digestive system. DNA tests confirmed the following week that the remains belonged to Van Zyl. His death came amid a steady rise in deadly crocodile attacks in the region, which had resulted in 4 deaths over a 4-month span. Nile crocodiles are notorious for their aggressive nature. They also tend to live in closer proximity to humans than other crocodilian species. Their jaws are so powerful that even large animals like wildebeests and buffalo rarely manage to escape their grasp. In most cases, the creatures either drown their victims or rip them to shreds. The species is responsible for hundreds of attacks on humans every year, with an estimated 275 attacks proving fatal. And because not all incidents are reported, some experts believe the actual number of deaths may be even higher.
Number 10. Hungry Crocodile. In Africa, just 5 days before a woman was to be married, she had a rather unfortunate run-in with a crocodile. Zanelle Ndlovu and her soon-to-be husband, Jamie Foxx, no relation to the actor, were canoeing in the Zambezi River near the biggest waterfall in the world, Victoria Falls. Then, from out of nowhere, a crocodile propelled itself out of the river and clamped its jaws down on Ndlovu's arm. As it dragged the woman from the boat into the water, it ripped her arm clean off. At the same time this was all happening, Jamie was being tossed out of the canoe on the other side from the sudden turbulence. It took him a second to regain his composure and figure out what was going on, and that was when he started punching the crocodile right in its face. He swam to where his bride was entangled with the crocodile that was trying to pull her to the bottom of the river and saved her life. He snatched her by the waist and punched the massive beast in the face with his free fist. Sadly, Jamie's heroic rescue couldn't save his wife's arm. He saved her life, sure, but she came out of that river with one arm instead of two. The truly romantic part is that the couple kept their same wedding date, only they moved the venue to inside the hospital. 5 days after the brutal attack, as Ndlovu was recovering, she walked down the aisle in the hospital and got married. Number 9. Eagle Attack. In Ethiopia, eagles are known for stealing and eating children. Back in September of 2019, a child perished following a savage and brutal attack at the hands, or should I say the claws, of an angry eagle. It happened in the district of Gashamo, with 2 of the children also being injured by similar attacks. Residents believe it's the same eagle singling out children and attacking them for no obvious reason. The mother of one of the victims, a woman named Muno Shoaib, was in her house when she suddenly heard screaming outside. She rushed out of the house to see an eagle holding her son on the ground and biting him. This was what she told reporters from the BBC. He was crying for his mother, who thought quickly and grabbed a stick off the ground and threw it at the bird. In this case, the mother managed to save her child's life thanks to her quick thinking. The stick scared the bird and it flew away. But the other child was not so lucky. Attacks by this eagle have become so severe, and the residents of the small village are so terrified that police are now trying to hunt the bird down. There's an ongoing police operation to find the vicious bird and kill it before it can take the life of anyone else's child. Number 8. The Bad Zoo Cleaner. At a Florida zoo, a cleaning worker was bitten by an endangered tiger after he put his arm into the animal's enclosure. According to the police, this man may now find himself being criminally charged, despite having been horribly injured by the big cat. The tiger was Echo, an 8-year-old Malayan tiger. Sadly, the beast was shot by officers responding to the attack when it refused to release the man's arm that it had stuck in its jaws. Body cam footage from an officer showed the terrifying ordeal. The body cam caught the cleaning worker, 26-year-old River Rosenquist, bloody and screaming. He was on the ground, arm stuck in the tiger's neck, screaming for help and begging the police officer to shoot the animal. He just kept screaming, "Shoot it! I'm going to die!" It was only after the officer reluctantly pulled the trigger that the tiger let go of the cleaner. The man ran away. The tiger retreated into its enclosure, and it was later pronounced dead. The Collier County Sheriff's Office is still determining whether charges will be filed against the injured man for his role in the incident. The cops say he was either petting or feeding the animal, both of which are highly dangerous and prohibited at the zoo. He wouldn't have nearly lost his arm if he hadn't stuck his hand into the cage for whatever reason. Do you think the man should be charged for his bad decision? Tell us in the comments. Number 7. Angry Alaskan Bear. In Alaska, yet another man has had a violent encounter with a bear. This time, the victim was a cyclist, a man riding his bike alone in Cantwell, an area overrun with wild bears. According to Alaska Wildlife Troopers, the victim first spotted a huge brown bear about 10 yards away, already sprinting at him. He jumped off his bike and started yelling at the bear, understanding that there was no way he could pedal faster than the bear could run. But his yelling didn't do much good. The bear jumped on him, sunk its huge teeth into the man's flesh, and then immediately turned and ran away. It didn't even stick around to finish the job. One bite was enough to satisfy the ferocious beast, and it retreated of its own accord. Luckily for the cyclist, he was able to call a friend for a ride to the nearest medical clinic. There he told the doctors the bear was at least 500 pounds. He also admitted that he had a firearm with him, but never thought to use it. For that, the bear was probably extremely thankful. The man got away with nothing more than a few puncture wounds, and the bear didn't get shot. It was a lucky though frightening day for everyone involved. Number 6. Trampoline Catastrophe. A young boy was minding his own business, jumping up and down on the trampoline in his friend's backyard, when the unimaginable happened. The boy, only 9 years old, was suddenly set upon by a pair of dogs that came out of nowhere, jumped onto his trampoline, and violently attacked. Just minutes before, everything had been perfectly fine. Hunter Heater was having a playdate at his friend's house, but while he was enjoying his playdate, a pair of dogs managed to escape from their cages and go after the two young boys on the trampoline. Hunter was so terribly wounded that his family had to start a GoFundMe page to help pay his medical bills. He suffered lacerations that barely missed some of his main arteries. He had to get over 200 stitches across his body, from his head to his toes. Plus, he received over 40 staples in his skull. And if all that wasn't bad enough, doctors had to put the muscles in his leg and arm back together and keep him under observation because his brain started to swell. He may need plastic surgery to get rid of the scars that now cover his face. Sadly, this is only the physical side of it. The boy is also emotionally devastated, suffering trauma and memory loss. He is expected to make a full recovery, but he'll likely be terrified of dogs for the rest of his life. Have you ever had a terrifying encounter with a household pet? Let me know about it in the comments, and don't forget to hit subscribe before the end of the video. Number 5. The Charging Cow. Brandon Pratt is an officer with the California Highway Patrol. As he was trying to shoo an escaped cow off a rural highway in Northern California, it became disorderly and attacked. The bovine, which weighed at least 2,000 pounds, turned the tables on the officer and began to chase Brandon across the street. It eventually caught up to him, bashing him as hard as it could from behind, nearly separating his right shoulder from his body. It put its head down, rammed the officer with all its might, and literally tossed him through the air. What makes this encounter so amazing is that it was captured on dashcam footage. Just 2 days before Christmas in 2021, as Brandon tried to make the streets a little safer for people driving home for the holidays, he found himself being tossed around like a rag doll on video by a rampaging cow. Luckily for Brandon, the cow didn't have any intention of sticking around after it had made its attack. As Brandon was recovering from being thrown through the air, the cow took off through a field, and that was the last Brandon ever saw of the rogue bovine. We might not think of cows as particularly dangerous, but in this case, it's clear that when angered, they can put that large size to use. Number 4. A cat outside your window. Police in Oak Bay, British Columbia, Canada, officially warned the public to be on the lookout for a dangerous cougar after an encounter on Tuesday morning that nearly turned deadly. A woman named Sunny Anthony was in her home at 6 in the morning when she had a close encounter with a cougar. The enormous cat was prowling outside a window. At first, she thought it was a random dog that had come to say hello, but as it turned out, that wasn't the case at all. She almost opened the door to go outside and see what was happening, but thought better of it at the last second. She went to the window instead to get a better look at whatever animal was creeping outside her home. That was when she spotted the giant mountain lion walking beside her Ford F-150 pickup truck. According to what she told the local news, the cat was so big that it stood as tall as the wheel well. She said never before in all her life had she seen a cat so extraordinarily large as this one. She ran to grab her cell phone, wanting to get a picture of the beast, but then she thought better of it and called 911 to warn them of a massive predator in the area. By the time she got back to the window, the cat was gone. Number 3. 2 sisters and a crocodile. A pair of sisters from Britain were on vacation in Mexico when they had the worst animal encounter of their lives. The sisters, each 28 years old, were taken to a lagoon by their tour guide with another group of tourists for a late afternoon swim. But what the girls and the other tourists didn't know was that the lagoon happened to be a nesting ground for enormous crocodiles. The adventure turned sour when both sisters were attacked by a massive 7-foot-long crocodile. According to what they've told news sources since the attack, they're both now suffering from PTSD and will probably never go swimming in a lagoon ever again. The sisters, Melissa and Georgia, traveled to the El Gayacan restaurant at the edge of the lagoon. It was about 4 o'clock on a Sunday, what they thought was a perfect time to go swimming in the nearby mangroves. But the mangroves aren't really meant for human swimmers, since they're used by crocodiles for hiding their eggs. The girls swam a few hundred feet up the river and away from the main beach where the other tourists were. And that was when Melissa found herself inside the jaws of the crocodile. It dragged her underwater and put her into a death roll. Georgia acted as quickly as she could. She punched the crocodile in its head and desperately tried to pull her sister from its mouth. Because of her bravery, her sister lived. Melissa almost had to have her left foot amputated since the crocodile had nearly ripped it off, but doctors ultimately managed to save it. The two escaped Mexico with their lives, if not with a bit of trauma. Number 2. Attacked by 20 otters. A man was injured and traumatized after he got attacked by a group of 20 otters. The little animals bit the man 26 times, sending him straight to the hospital. That's right, otters. Charming and cuddly though they usually are, in this case their behavior was just the opposite. The victim in this case was a British national living in Singapore. His name is Graham George Spencer, and he told local news sources that he actually thought he was going to die. He was taking a stroll through the Singapore Botanic Gardens with a friend in late November when a group of otters crossed the dimly lit path. It was the first time he had ever seen otters in the area, and he had been taking his morning walk in the same place for at least 5 months. But pretty soon, he was wishing he had never seen them at all. It was a magical moment until a jogger ran straight through the group of otters and caused them to go crazy. They then turned into a pack of rabid dogs and attacked Spencer, biting him in the legs, shoes, and the butt. In about 10 seconds, he suffered 26 bites. That was how long it took for somebody nearby to run up and scare the otters back into the water. Spencer had to get a tetanus shot and oral antibiotics, as well as stitches for his wounds. In the end, his cute morning encounter cost him about $1,200 in medical bills. Number 1. Close encounter with an anaconda. Professional shark diver Bartolomeo Bove took things to the next level when in 2019 he traveled to the Brazilian state of Mato Grosso to have an encounter with a giant anaconda. Bartolomeo, a professional videographer, wanted to get as close to the biggest living snake in the world as possible. So, once he was deep in the Brazilian jungle, he dove into the Formoso River, and it was there he met a 23-foot green anaconda, weighing an estimated 200 pounds. The creature was so big that it could have easily snapped the man's neck in just seconds. Then, if it wanted to, it could have swallowed him whole as a light morning snack. Instead, the anaconda seemed more curious than hungry. It swam extremely close to the diver, flicking its tongue against his camera and being oddly gentle. This honestly debunks any previous notion that anacondas are aggressive snakes. They're definitely extremely strong predators, and I don't think most people would ever voluntarily get in a river with one. But unless provoked or starving, they don't seem to have much interest in devouring humans.
10. Pulling a gun. A Karen who pulled a gun on a mother and daughter outside of a Chipotle in summer of 2020 was charged with felony assault, along with her husband. Her name is Jillian Westenberg, and she went full Karen at about 6 o'clock in the evening one Wednesday in Oakland, California. She and her husband were leaving the Chipotle restaurant, and as they were walking out the door, Julian bumped into a woman who was walking in. For the sake of clarity, it's important to know that Jillian is a middle-aged white woman, like most Karens out there, and the woman she bumped into was black. What should have just been a simple encounter, maybe followed by an apology, turned into a shouting match. Jillian and her victim were screaming at each other. Somebody called Jillian a racist, and that was when her husband, Eric Westenberg, joined in with the shouting. Things got so out of hand that Jillian pulled a handgun out of her purse and pointed it at the woman. Her husband, Eric, pulled out his gun as well. The victim was helpless as she tried to protect her 3 daughters from being shot by 2 clearly mentally unstable people. Thankfully, nobody was shot, and the Westenbergs fled in their minivan. But the clip of what happened went viral, and the next day, both of them were arrested. Jillian and Eric were both charged with 1 count of felonious assault, which could land them up to 4 years in prison. 9. Delta Karen. By far, one of the most notorious Karens of 2021 was the woman who assaulted an elderly man on a Delta flight. It happened on December 23rd, with the Delta Airlines flight going from Tampa to Atlanta. According to the Atlanta Police Department, it was Patricia Cornwall who caused a major disturbance in the middle of the flight, beating up an old man because of a dispute over masks. Her outburst led to the injury of other passengers and employees for Delta. And luckily for all of us at home, the whole thing was caught on video. It started when Patricia told an elderly man sitting in his seat to put his mask on. He told her to mind her own business and that he was eating. For anyone who took a plane during the pandemic, you'll know the only time you were allowed to have your mask off was when you were eating or drinking, which is totally understandable. But rather than leave things as they were, Patricia stood up and started screaming at him. But what makes the whole thing so truly ridiculous is that Patricia didn't even have her mask on throughout the exchange. She wanted him to put his mask on, but she couldn't be bothered to put on her own. As she screamed, she inadvertently spat on everybody in the general vicinity. Eventually, Patricia slapped the old man in the face. A flight attendant grabbed her arm, Patricia pushed her away, and then she spat in the man's face and hit him with a closed fist in the cheek. It took 3 flight attendants to finally get control of Patricia, and by that time, the elderly man was bleeding. She had to be restrained until the flight finally landed in Atlanta, at which point she was arrested. 8. Coughing on the sick. At a Pier 1 store in Jacksonville, Florida, a woman was caught on camera spitting and coughing on a brain tumor patient. It doesn't get much more Karen than this. On June 25, 2020, Deborah Hunter's life changed forever when she was ousted to the entire country as a piece of human garbage. The victim, Heather Sprague, managed to catch every last second of the bizarre outburst on her phone. Heather began recording when Deborah got into an argument with one of the employees at the store over an item return. When Deborah saw that she was being filmed, she walked up and coughed in Heather's face, blowing spit all over her skin. What she didn't realize was that the woman she had just coughed on was being treated for a brain tumor in the middle of a pandemic. If she had given Heather COVID deliberately, it could have caused major complications with her recovery process. Thankfully, everything was caught on video and Deborah was given a fitting sentence. She was ordered to pay a fine of $500, serve 6 months on probation, and attend a mental health evaluation and anger management. 7. The mother and son duo. In early December of 2021, a Karen from Tennessee and her son were caught on camera calling the police and assaulting a black man who was working in the garage of an apartment complex. The victim's name is Johnny Martinez. He was doing his job in the parking garage of the Nashville complex, which included checking vehicle permits. As he was in the middle of simply doing what he was supposed to, the mother and son approached him and demanded he tell them his business. He had no need to tell them what he was doing. It was absolutely none of their business, yet they took it to a whole new level of ridiculousness. Bitsy Brennan and her son, Edward, demanded to see this man's identification. They kept claiming he didn't live in the building. Then Edward tried to slap Johnny's cell phone out of his hand. It was all quite violent and provocative, and totally unnecessary. The mother and son Karens got a hold of the police, but they were gone by the time the cops arrived. They clearly knew they had done something wrong because Johnny stuck around to deal with the cops while they fled. But don't worry, they got what was coming to them soon enough. Bitsy lost her job following the incident. She had been an investment broker, but now that's all gone. Her company confirmed that she was no longer working for their firm about 5 days after the attack, and she had been working for the company for over a decade. All that hard work washed down the drain because a man with dark skin was doing his own job and minding his own business in her apartment complex, and she didn't like it. 6. The Soho Karen. The Soho Karen is about as notorious as Karens get. She first came on the scene in December of 2020 when she dragged a 14-year-old to the lobby floor of the Arlo Hotel in New York City. Why? She claimed he stole her phone. Footage of Maya Poinsetta tackling the teenager, who just so happened to be black, was captured by the teen's father and shared with everyone on the internet. She accused Keon Harold Jr. of stealing her cell phone, which was not true at all. Minutes after the incident took place, after the 22-year-old woman had basically assaulted a child, an Uber driver turned up with her phone. It looked like she had forgotten it in his vehicle. Maya basically ruined her life with this whole fiasco. She had been a cheerleader and aspiring actress, but quickly turned into one of the most hated people in New York City. As of right now, she's facing jail time and charges of committing a hate crime. But here's the icing on the cake. She was already a mess. She had gotten into trouble months before the Soho incident when Maya and her mom caused a disturbance at a California hotel. Staff at the hotel asked them to leave, but Maya and her mother refused. Somebody called the Beverly Hills police, and when the cops came, they found Maya and her mother drunk in public. Maya's mother attacked the cops with some punches and kicks, and Maya was charged with public intoxication. She was also caught just the day before for driving drunk and was given a 3-year probation. 5. The Mega Karen. April 7, 2021, a Mega Karen was arrested by a pair of officers at a Nordstrom rack in Texas. The woman refused to wear her mask when she entered the store, then got physical with the employees inside. Her name is Cara Bell, and she told the employees she had a medical exemption and didn't need to wear a mask. When they said it didn't matter and she needed to leave, she started pushing the workers and getting very agitated. Then the cops showed up as she was standing outside ranting like an absolute crazy person. Cara Bell refused to identify herself. She was screaming about being a child of God and basically said she was allowed to do whatever she wanted. She also claimed that she was the one who was insulted by the employees and that she had been discriminated against for being white. In the end, this Karen didn't get into much trouble. She didn't do anything except refuse to wear a mask and act irrational and crazy. She was detained by the police and revealed to her community as an unstable person. Considering she was a local school board candidate at the time, this probably ruined her immediate plans. 4. Meltdown at the bagel shop. A woman in Florida had a meltdown at a bagel shop in January of 2021. At the time, she was a candidate for mayor in Boynton Beach, South Florida. Cindy Falco DeCorrada didn't act like much of a mayor, though, when she walked into the fast food restaurant without wearing a mask and then caused a scene. Immediately, workers at the Einstein Brothers bagel shop asked her to put a mask on her or leave. She responded by screaming like a banshee, crying that her rights were being violated, and complaining the masks were unconstitutional. She refused to leave, which may have actually saved her career. Instead, she was filmed having one of the biggest meltdowns probably of her adult life. Then, when the police came, things got even more heated. An officer moved in to arrest her, and she continued screaming. She told the officer to get their hands off of her. She said she had the right to protect herself. And then, as she was being carried away in handcuffs, she screamed that the officer was kidnapping her. She ended up being found guilty of trespassing and resisting an officer, with each offense punishable by up to 1 year in jail. Instead of running for mayor, Cindy might be sitting in a jail cell. 3. Hurling a Whopper. Judith Ann Black is a retiree in her 70s who grew up in Texas and is living in Florida. In early 2021, Judith was caught on video throwing a Whopper at an employee at Burger King and dishing out some pretty harsh insults. She called the worker, who happened to be a black woman, something that I absolutely cannot repeat, but that you can probably guess. Why did the racially charged burst of anger start? According to the police report, Judith was upset that the tomato on her burger was too thick. When the employee asked if she would please calm down, Judith went on a racist rant and threw the burger in her face. Judith knew she had done something wrong. She got out of there as quickly as possible, but not before another employee got her license plate and phoned the police. The cops tracked Judith down to a retirement home, and she was promptly arrested and charged with battery. 2. The manager of the airport. On May 27, 2021, the airport Karen struck. Her name is Tare Ann Blues, and she was arrested on camera demanding to see the manager of the airport. She was an advanced form of Karen, evolving from screaming for managers at shopping centers to the mythical manager of the entire Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport. Why was she so angry? Tare had been denied access to her flight. It had nothing to do with masks, but was because she was wasted and acting crazy. According to American Airlines, she was screaming at the counter. Then, when she was told to sit down and be patient, she ran to the bridge door in an attempt to push her way onto the plane. The police had to come and escort Tare out of the building. When they arrived on scene, the woman was sweating. She was breathing heavily, and her eyes were totally red and bloodshot. She was arrested for public intoxication and, when searched, was found to have containers of random pills and a small black pouch with a glass pipe. This Karen apparently had a bit of a pill problem. 1. Slurs in the park. A woman from Long Beach was caught in a viral video back in October of 2019 committing a racist attack. This one was bizarre because the woman, identified as Lena Hernandez, went out of her way to attack Asian Americans in a public park. This was in Torrance at Charles Wilson Park. Lena first assaulted a custodian at the mall, then attacked a Filipino-American woman, and was just being generally terrible to all the Asian people in the area. But it was her attack on the Filipino woman that earned her a cozy 45 days in jail. She shoved Kesa Lynn Saminao to the ground, pulled her hair, and punched her in the head multiple times. This was after 2 different incidents in June when Lena had been caught ranting in the same park, going off on racial tirades aimed at Asian Americans. She just kept going back to the park and screaming about Asians, clearly mentally disturbed. Hopefully the 45 days in jail will make her think twice about going back to the park and causing problems, or indeed, causing problems in any park. Number 12. In the wrong hands. Everyone makes mistakes, but how often do those mistakes cost us our lives? Sometimes a small error in judgment can cause havoc, and unfortunately for this pilot, things went poorly. On June 26, 2018, in New York, a private plane was about to take off on a flight to Los Angeles. All was going well until the pilot noticed something wrong. In case you didn't know, pilots are assisted by operators in communications towers through a radio. The pilot noticed that there was a problem with his radio. It had been cut off due to technical issues, and he wasn't able to contact the tower to get a takeoff confirmation. Meanwhile, the tower on the ground was getting worried since they hadn't heard from the plane. But in situations like this, there's always a plan B in place. By punching a 4-digit code in on a console, the tower could be notified of the technical error. But in his rush to reach the tower, the voiceless pilot accidentally triggered the hijacked alert code. All hell broke loose at the tower, where officials alerted SWAT teams to handle the matter. This went on for hours, with alarmed passengers wondering why in the world was their flight delayed. While this was happening, the pilot, unable to contact the tower or reassure the passengers, managed to successfully communicate about the false alarm, but not before 3 long hours had passed. Number 11. Bullet in the Sky. On October 22, 2021, in Chicago, USA, a business jet was all set to take off, and as usual, inspectors stepped in to inspect the plane for any safety violations or faulty parts. While they didn't find any of that, what they did see left them dumbfounded. A small piece of metal lodged into the business jet's left wing. When they investigated further into what it could be, it turned out to be a bullet. Where did the bullet come from, and who fired the bullet? The answers to these questions weren't revealed to the public, but we can't help but wonder if it was a stray bullet or one that was directed toward somebody. The damage to the jet has been deemed harmless, but it's still mysterious. If it had been aimed slightly higher, it could have taken out a window or maybe even a passenger. Number 10. Flying High. On November 3, 2021, in a fancy Chicago neighborhood, a private jet that just got back from a trip to Mexico showed some suspicious interactions. Though it's not uncommon for a fancy private jet to arrive at an international airport, the authorities were having second thoughts. Despite their suspicions, they didn't have a warrant, so the private jet went on unsearched. But it certainly wasn't their lucky day, as the authorities were soon notified of drug dealers that recently arrived in the area. The informant's tip turned out to be true, and officers were able to bust 3 men in a hotel carrying 100 kilos of cocaine. The 3 men, Sebastian, Alexis, and Sergio, allegedly arrived on the same private jet that flagged off suspicion. Having passed through security with that much cocaine won't work out well for them in a trial. The 3 dealers have been taken into custody and will have to face the wrath of the judicial system. But there's a pretty high chance they're going to prison. Number 9. Bursting into flames. How often do you think planes catch on fire? As you might have guessed, the probability is low, but not zero. On October 19, 2021, in a small Houston airport, a private jet containing 18 passengers and 3 crew members was about to peacefully take off and set course to Boston for a Major League Baseball championship game, when things took an ugly turn. What was supposed to be a fun trip wound up as a near-death experience. So here's what happened. As the private jet was about to take off, one of the engines failed, causing a fuselage explosion that spread a raging fire across the length of the jet. All the passengers and crew members miraculously escaped safely, with only 2 bearing non-life-threatening injuries. The passengers were likely traumatized by the event, but there's no doubt things could have gone much worse. What's your biggest fear when it comes to airplanes? Let us know in the comments, and subscribe if you like what you've seen so far. Number 8. Man who saves lives loses his. We often idolize doctors, but this doesn't mean they can't get into any trouble. And this is exactly what happened to Dr. Reuben Cohen. On July 3, 2021, in Colorado, a private jet plane owned by the world-famous surgeon Reuben Cohen was en route to explore the skies just for fun. Dr. Cohen was actually a licensed pilot himself. Unfortunately, the doctor, along with his aviator, David Zara, decided to explore the mountains outside of Aspen, known to be a tricky and dangerous spot for flying. As they took off and enjoyed their time, an unfortunate turn of events began to unfold. The surgeon and his pilot met their end amid the cold ridges of the treacherous mountains. Dr. Cohen could have saved many more lives, but no one can escape fate, not even someone who helps others defy it. Number 7. Private plane crashes into a house. When you're just relaxing at home, the last thing you'd expect would be a plane crash landing into your house. But sadly, one unlucky homeowner got to experience this terrifying event. On November 18th in South Chicago, a 3,000-kilogram cargo plane took off from a nearby airport. It was bound for another spot. When mid-flight, the pilot reported engine problems to the tower. The tower responded by changing the pilot's route to make an emergency landing on a nearby runway. The pilot followed the orders. Sadly, that would be the last time they'd ever hear from the pilot. When the authorities checked, the plane was recognized as the one which had been rerouted. Although nobody else was harmed, the pilot of the plane died in the crash. The homeowners were utterly shocked to see a massive plane crash into their home, but they were able to get out safely without any injuries. This story makes us believe that it is never too late to expect the unexpected or get home insurance. Number 6. First flight, last flight. Live for something rather than die for nothing is a quote that most soldiers stick to with all their heart. They willingly lay down their lives to protect the country and its citizens. On July 4, 2021, in Sulu, Philippines, a private military plane containing 96 fresh graduates from military training were en route to finally assume their duties in Sulu, but not all of them made it. While mid-flight, the military plane missed the runway for its destination and was asked to route its way back. Out of the blue, the engines failed and the plane came crashing down into a nearby town, killing 45 soldiers and injuring 49 more. Apart from the soldiers, a few civilians were also hurt. It was not the first time such an accident happened, but it is something we hope to never see again. Number 5. Engine failure. How far can your wealth take you? Can death discriminate between the rich and the poor? Sadly, no matter how much you have or how little, death doesn't discriminate. On October 4, 2021, in Milan, Italy, the 68-year-old Romanian billionaire Petrescu decided to visit Italy using his private jet, bringing along his wife and his child. They prepared for a fun trip, not realizing that it would be their last. At the time, Petrescu had just received his pilot's license and planned a trip for Milan while flying his own private plane. Unfortunately, mid-flight and way before they reached the airport, an engine failure occurred and the sound of an explosion echoed over Milan. The remnants of the plane later crashed into a building down below. Petrescu, his wife, and his 30-year-old son, as well as 5 others, perished. The cause for the engine failure is yet to be known, but there is nothing more we can do about it. The damage has been done, and nobody can undo this devastating tragedy. Number 4. Florida's tragic crash. As we've said before, things can happen when you least expect them to. On March 15, 2021, in Florida, a private plane was traveling over a neighborhood in Pembroke Pines when the plane got too low for comfort and started to take a nosedive. Before the 2 people inside realized, the plane had already been caught up in a power line, causing them to fall down, but not before slamming into a passing SUV in a head-on collision. What's worse is that the SUV had a mother and her child inside. The crash was caught on camera, and fire is seen spreading through the street immediately after the direct impact. By the time help arrived, the 2 pilots were dead on the spot. As for the mother and her child, they were brought to the hospital with grievous wounds. Out of the 2, the child did not survive. Fate, my friends, has a funny way of playing things out. Number 3. Joe Lara's private plane crash. Tarzan was a childhood classic, a story we all loved, and a character that we all knew. One of the first actors to portray the icon was Joe Lara. Unfortunately, with all the memories he left for us, he himself became one. On May 29, 2021, in Florida, Hollywood actor Joe Lara went on a ride in his private plane with his wife and another famous author, Gwen Shamlin. The 2 were heading to Florida's beaches for a vacation. However, instead of relaxation and relief, tragedy and grief struck them. The plane that Joe and Gwen were flying in suddenly malfunctioned mid-air, causing it to dive head down into a lake. The crash into water had enough inertia to crush everything inside of it. Unfortunately, Joe and Gwen experienced this firsthand, leading to their deaths. Joe was 58 years old at the time of the crash. It is tragic for many fans who had known Joe since his days as Tarzan, or those that were fans of Gwen's books, and the fact that we'll never see them is still sinking in for many. Number 2. Delta flight almost gets hijacked. A hijack, one of the most fear-inducing situations to be in, could either be a train or a boat hijack, but the worst hijack crimes have taken place in planes. In August of 2021, somewhere between Afghanistan and Iran, a Ukrainian private plane carrying passengers evacuating out of Afghanistan was sent to pick up Ukrainians who were stuck between the war and their country. However, they were unaware of the risk and the situation that was about to unfold. When the Ukrainian plane arrived, it picked up an unknown number of passengers, prepared to be evacuated to Kiev in Ukraine from war-torn Afghanistan. They had no idea that some of them were not mere passengers. Mid-flight, the hijackers revealed themselves in the plane, taking all unidentified passengers hostage. Despite how dangerous the situation was, the hijackers flew the plane into Iran, and miraculously, all the passengers were safely returned to Kabul, where the plane landed. It's unclear how or why and what the motives of the hijackers were, but one thing's for sure, they were up to no good. Number 1. Pilot and his wife died 4 days after their wedding. "Till death do us part" is often said in marriage vows, but few couples actually have to face this tragic situation. On October 5, 2020, somewhere in the United States, a couple got married and were on their way to their honeymoon when bad luck struck. 30-year-old Kostas John Sivilis, a United Airlines pilot, and his wife, 33-year-old Lindsay Vogelaar, wrapped up their mountaintop wedding on October 1st and were initially planning to return back home after a couple of days. That is, until they reached the 4th day of their trip. Before the day of the crash, the couple had been blogging and sharing their honeymoon and celebrating through videos. Since Mr. Sivilis was a pilot, they both decided to end their honeymoon on a good note and rented a private plane to go back home. Unfortunately, before they even reached the standard altitude for planes, the engines failed midway, causing the couple to plummet to their imminent deaths. The cause of the engine failure is unclear, and authorities are baffled by how such an experienced pilot would fail to see a faulty plane. Hopefully, they are still together in the afterlife.
Thanks for watching. Would you rather have your car window smashed by an animal during a safari but walk away from the incident without injury, or suffer an injury that forces you to stay behind at your hotel while the rest of your travel group goes exploring? Let us know in the comments below, but be sure to subscribe first. See you soon. Bye.